Hi, my name is William Dunbar. For my final project, I focused on visualizing city compensation data using Highcharts. So in this video, I'm going to first present the problem that I was trying to solve in my final project. I'm going to provide an overview of the data sets that I used, and the technology that I used to access those data sets is called Socrata. I'll give an overview of the Highcharts JavaScript product. I'll talk about the benefits of Highcharts. I'll talk about the disadvantages of Highcharts, and some of the challenges I faced in my project. At that point, I'm going to jump into the code and talk about how it works. And then finally, I'll show the final result. I'll show what I built. So the problem that I was trying to solve was to address the challenge of quickly creating visualizations to find insights about how American cities compensate their public employees. I compared 4 major American cities: San Francisco, Boston, New York City, and Chicago. And I asked questions like, which cities pay the highest average salaries to their workers? Which departments are highest paying? Which job titles make the most money on average? Can we derive any insights about a city based on how they pay their employees? So if a city pays a certain employee a lot of money, what does that tell us about the city? If they pay police officers a ton of money, does that mean that they have a crime problem? The data sets that I used I sourced them from Socrata. It is a company based in Seattle, and they provide a cloud platform that makes it really easy for city governments to distribute public data to anyone, to developers, to people who don't know, who aren't very technical and just want to see a spreadsheet with data on it. Socratic, you can access the data, you can download the data from their website into CSV, JSON, PDF, RDF, RSS, XLS. You can also access it via an HTTP request. That's what I did in my project. So to visualize the data, I used Highcharts. Highcharts is a JavaScript-based technology that makes it really easy to build out charts and visualizations in a web page. So if you tried to create a Highchart chart from scratch, let's say you wanted to use D3, or you wanted to just use JavaScript, if you just use JavaScript, it would take hundreds and hundreds, thousands of lines of code. Using Highcharts, you can do it in like 50 lines of code. To use Highcharts, you're just going to include the URL where the Highcharts libraries are located in the script tag in the head section of your web page. And they also provide 2 other products called HighStocks and HighMaps. HighStocks is for visualizing stock data. HighMaps is actually something that I used in my final presentation, and that's used to create like map visualizations. The challenges that I faced were I had trouble overlaying latitude and longitude coordinates onto a map. That was a real challenge. With practice, I'm sure that it would not be difficult, but my first time using HighMaps, that was tricky. I also had trouble. So Highcharts has like 50 different libraries that you import or that you can import into your page. Sometimes those libraries clash with each other, so you have one library, then you need another library, and sometimes if you've imported Highcharts, you don't need to import HighMaps. It might have just been my experience, and I was using Highcharts incorrectly. I'm sure the Highcharts expert would say, "Oh, you're doing exactly this wrong," but that was one of the things that I had trouble with, so I had to play with that a little bit. Overall, a really easy to use product and something that you can create great visualizations out of. Okay, so we don't need to talk about results right now, but let's jump into the code. So my final project is just a HTML document and 5 JavaScript files. So let's start with the HTML document. In the head, we're going to include all of our script tags. So Highcharts requires jQuery. So I've imported a recent version of jQuery. It also, to plot those latitude and longitude points onto a map, I needed to import this Cloudflare library. Um, and then I've got all of my Highcharts libraries. And then also I'm including my JavaScript files. So I've done a little bit of CSS styling in the page. One thing that was initially a challenge, and I figured out how to do it, and it wasn't hard, was I have images behind each of my charts. When those images were fully visible, they made the charts difficult to read. By reducing the opacity, I was able to still have a nice little picture behind the chart, but make the chart easy to read. And then the rest of the page is just 3 divs. We've got a map div where we're going to put the map, and then 2 chart containers where users will be able to drill into details. Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to create a variable and import Highcharts up here. And then I'm going to reference the US-all map within the HiMaps library. Then I'm creating a bunch of an array of JSON objects here, and so I've got just some details that HiMaps needs. So this was one thing that I was not able to figure out. They need this capital attribute when you're overlaying latitude and longitude components. So I had to say that the capital of New York is New York City. This doesn't display to the end user, but this was just one of those things that I had to live with, even though it bothered me because the capital of New York is Albany. Likewise, the capital of Illinois is Springfield, and the capital of California is Sacramento, but just had to live with this. Additionally, something that I think I would have built out was, this is the size of each bubble in the map, and this represents the average city compensation. I initially had I calculated these values using JavaScript. I just haven't included it in my final project because the values weren't going to change. The data sets are static at this point. They're not going to change compensation information from 2013, so I didn't think I needed to keep importing it over and over again. Okay, so moving along, we come down, we're going to create a Highchart, give it a type of map, and attach it to the map div. We're going to give it a title, provide some map navigation, chart attributes, and then this is important. So tooltips mean that when you hover over a point on the map, it's going to display the point's capital, which is just going to say New York City. It won't say the capital of New York is New York City, so that's good. It'll give the state, latitude, longitude, and average city employee compensation. When we come down here, we can add event listeners to the map, so we can say that the capital, if someone's hovering over San Francisco, let's call the San Francisco function and the San Francisco title function. So on that note, let's take a look at the Boston code. So the first thing that we're going to do is define a URL that we're going to look at. Then we're going to use Socrates query language to pull department and average total earnings. We're going to group by department and then in order by total earnings descending. So this will give me just a list of the top 10 average total earnings or the top 10 departments by average total earnings. Then I'm going to do an HTTP request using jQuery. I'm going to pass a string, and Socrata is going to give us back a CSV. Then we can create a Highchart, attach it to the chart container, and pass that CSV as data, and Highcharts will automatically process the data and create a nice little chart. And then I can define other attributes here, like I can put a background image. So this is my background image that's going to show a little picture of Boston in the background. Okay, I'm going to open my final project at this point. The code for New York City is similar. San Francisco is the only place that I had to do a little bit of extra custom code, which was to strip out some extra commas in the CSV data. Okay, to run my project, all you do is just double click on the HTML page. If you have Chrome, it'll open up in Chrome. This should work for Firefox as well. I haven't tested it for Internet Explorer or other browsers, but it's pretty basic basic HTML. So when I hover over each of my map points, first of all, so you can see how easy this map was to build out. Like I didn't have to do a ton of JavaScript code to get a map. Highcharts does the heavy lifting of getting you a map, and then you just needed to say where to put the points. So the average compensation for the city of Boston, 61,000. New York, 39,000. Makes sense because New York is a huge city that probably has a ton of employees, and therefore the average is going to come down. Chicago, 80,000. San Francisco, 97,000. When I went to record this video, it occurred to me that 97,000 seems outrageously high for public employees. So I might challenge that data point. At the same time, it might be correct. When you look at the highest paid employees in the city of San Francisco, there are some people making a ton of money. Let's drill into the San Francisco data. Actually, before I drill into the San Francisco data, let's just talk about the results here. So I talked about the average salaries for each city. So which city pays the highest average salaries to their workers? Well, we were able to answer that. San Francisco is paying $97,000 a year on average to city workers. So let's try and figure out which departments are highest paying for each city. Which job titles are making the most money on average? And then can we derive any insights about the city based on how they pay their employees? I had a couple key insights which I'll talk about, but I'll talk about them as I go through each individual city. Just a couple things. You'll see each city fire departments make a lot of money. I thought that was interesting. Also, the mayor's department is consistently on each city. And then finally, like finance related departments are in most of the data sets. So if we jump over to the data here, let's start with San Francisco. Fire department, huge average compensation there. I thought this makes sense for a city like San Francisco. They have earthquake problems. They need disaster relief roles in the city, so it makes sense. City attorney and public defender, clearly they have focused on prosecuting crime. That's borne out with the chief of police. Huge salaries in San Francisco, though. The chief of police, people in that role are making $413,000 a year. The chief investment officer makes $437,000 a year. You can see the mayor appears in San Francisco, $369,000 a year. It seems like a lot of money for a public employee. But San Francisco is a world-class city, and clearly they're doing something right. Let's look at Chicago. I thought this was interesting. The commissioner of aviation in Chicago makes $300,000 a year. Chicago is a hub city. They have 2 international airports. Most of the time, if you're going somewhere in the West, you need to go through Chicago. So they have a ton of air traffic, and that's clearly something that they spend a lot of money on managing. Mayor's salary is still very high. The people at the top make a lot of money. And you can see the fire commissioner, first deputy fire commissioner, also making a lot of money. This was a really interesting insight. New York City. So in the top 10 we have the chief actuary, and we also have the commissioner of emergency management. This data is from 2013, which is the year after Superstorm Sandy hit New York. So clearly in the wake of that, they had a ton of insurance issues and need to compensate a chief actuary to deal with those insurance issues. And they also realized that they wanted to prioritize paying employees who were going to deal with emergencies. Finally, when we look at Boston, we can see almost all of their highest paid employees are police workers. Um, I don't know if I don't know if this is correlation or causation, whatever, but Boston's a very safe city, so clearly we're paying for it. Um, that's my final project. I'd really recommend that folks take a look at Highcharts if they're trying to do some data visualizations. It's really easy to use and easy to gain valuable insights. Also, if you're looking for city government data, Socrata is an excellent option. Thanks for taking the time to watch my video.